it's just a brief rundown about, I guess, what we do as a coffee roaster, but also with our green bean suppliers that we're dealing with Tony and Selena and Daniel from First Crop and Marcel, and also the benefits of purchasing, we're quite big on purchasing RFA coffee. So yes, look, it's a little bit about red bean coffee, and that we've sort of gone down a path of sort of ethical trading and making sure that our farmers get looked after, and and also Tony and Marcel doing the right thing by them, which is great to hear. And it doesn't happen much, so it's pretty much about pushing sort of a new direction of where we're at and the coffee industry. And I know there's a few guys in the coffee industry here that we're trying to, I guess, change the direction of how we purchase and how ethical we purchase our coffee, and also looking after, the farmers that work incredibly hard to give us the coffee that we roast, and for obviously the public to enjoy too.
I've decided today, instead of talking about ethical sourcing and purchasing, there's just way too much to explain in a short amount of time. So today I've decided an aspect of that whole ethical world, which is direct trade, and just explaining to you guys why transparency is so important. I personally have a huge problem with the term direct trade. I'm not sure about other people in the coffee industry, how baristas feel, but I do feel personally, and also just from my 12 plus years in the coffee industry, that the term direct trade is just a clever and deceptive marketing term which is used to gain trust from consumers. So it's the type of thing where coffee companies use these terms like direct trade to kind of trick customers and consumers into thinking that they know exactly what they're talking about, and then customers just don't ask the right questions, or just don't have any questions to ask them about it. They just take it as the truth and they believe it. There are many, many hands in the chain, and the farmer is one of them, yes. The farmer is not even, in most cases, the most important person, because you need to define what a farmer is. In most cases, where we're talking about a situation like this with direct trade, the farmer is actually the smallholder, which means that he doesn't have the end product. He just has a cherry that he's picked off his tree. Now, it means that after he's done picking his cherries, he actually takes this to a cooperative, which he's a part of. The other definition of a farmer is that a farmer could be a farm owner, which means that he has all these pickers and all these other people that run his farm underneath him, and he's actually in charge of all these people. Or a farmer could be an estate owner. So as an example, we've been working really closely with the same producer in Popayán in Colombia for about 6 years now. So that producer, we call him our farmer, but he's actually not the farmer. He is the farm owner, and there's like 1,000 people that work under him to help him operate everything. And then obviously you've got the pickers, people who work at the wet mill, and so forth. So to talk about the chain of the hands, you've got the farmer, you've got a wet mill. Now, a wet mill is where the coffee is pulped, fermented, sorted, washed, and dried. The coffee then goes from a wet mill to a dry mill, which is where the parchment is polished, and then it's sorted with color sorters, and sometimes by hand, and like this, they're just sorted by hand, and then they're bagged. Then there's also storage, which happens sometimes between the wet mill and the dry mill, because there's not enough coffee for the actual dry mill, because there's a minimum requirement for a dry mill to actually process all the coffee. There's also storage after the dry mill as well, depending on whether the coffee is going straight to the port to get on a boat and come here, or maybe it's just waiting for a buyer. So then you've got the port of origin, which is where the coffee actually is stuffed into a container, and the container is loaded. Then you have the shipping line, and it's between 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the origin of where the coffee is coming from, to come to Australia. Then there's the freight forwarder. Now, the freight forwarder is someone who holds a license to deal with all the, the customs clearance and also the quarantine. Being that the coffee is coming to Australia, Australia is one of the strictest countries when it comes to quarantine and, having all the phytosanitary certificates is one of the things that we have to deal with, and it's basically just a term that means checking if there's any chemicals or bugs or anything that the coffee could be contaminated with. So that's one of the things that guy does. Warehousing is another thing. Warehousing is where the coffee is unpacked, palletized, and then it's stored. Then after all that, it comes to the roaster. Now, I've explained to you the wet mill, the dry mill, the port of origin, the shipping line, the freight forwarder, warehousing, and then finally the roaster. Now, that's actually 6 people, not including all the transport involved. So coffee has to go from the point of where it's picked to the wet mill. Someone takes it there. From the wet mill to the dry mill. Someone takes it there. From the dry mill to storage to port of origin, it gets on a shipping boat, it comes here. So there's all these different hands in the chain that no one talks about. And that's why direct trade is not feasible. It's not a feasible term to use. But as a company, we have always been transparent with how our coffee is transported, is moved, is purchased. And as a family-owned business, that's just who we are. We are honest and we really do care not only about our customers, but we really care about all those producers that we work with. So those relationships are so important with us. When people talk about direct trade, it's like them saying they've gone and bought a bottle of milk from Coles, but instead of saying that they bought it from Coles, they're saying they drove to regional Victoria, bought raw milk in a steel bucket from a farmer's cow and did all the pasteurizing themselves. Now, that's what roasters do when they say they're buying direct trade coffee, because they're not acknowledging any of those people along the chain that work so hard to get the product to us where it is right now. So in my opinion, it belittles the product. So the whole notion behind coffee going from farmer to roaster and having no one else in between shows that to an uneducated person, they would believe that there's no other hands that are involved. So obviously, as I've shown, there are a lot. So for those people, it actually cheapens the value of the coffee because they believe it's less people in the chain. The coffee price should actually be a lot less than it actually is. So the value of the product drops and, it should be cheaper, right? If there's less hands. That's just what we believe as humans. But I want you guys to just be able to see through the bullshit of a lot of marketing when people talk about, how they pay the farmer or that they've paid the farmer directly. That's the first sign that something is wrong there. Because as soon as they talk about paying a farmer directly, that should be the first warning sign for you that that's not the full story, because you now know that there are a lot of other people.
We import coffees from Brazil. I'm the only member of the Brazil Specialty Coffee Association in Australia. I have a history of in coffee. My grandfather was migrant from Italy, ended up in Brazil, his family, and he was born in a coffee farm. The whole family worked as coffee pickers. I opened Minas Hill with the focus in do something different, with the focus in paying respect to my grandfather and to the communities of coffee, which I knew beforehand how do they struggle anywhere in the world. So it's not just in Central America or Africa or Colombia, but also in Brazil, in Asia. It's hard because agricultural products, they follow stock market, and we understand that stock market is paying a huge price. The stock market is harming so much, and the farmers paying that big price of of struggling or not making any money or making less money than any time before. The social, we just launched the Minas Hill Foundation, which is a foundation that is taking care of social and environmental projects in Brazil. We only work with farmers direct, and buying from farmers is giving us deep insight of their problems or the community problems, surrounding problems. And Minas Hill Foundation are not for profit, so this separate entity takes care of presentations like this or presentation elsewhere, going to Brazil, getting information of the funds applicate in there, getting back and giving feedback to coffee roasters. It also raised necessary funds among coffee peers for existing or new social and or environmental projects, and offer the transparency and professionalism the market demands from us. So we have become youth certified to offer this transparency, to give the coffee roasters the necessary transparency. The farmers are not employing children, not destroying the environment, which is a huge problem everywhere in any field, even in coffee industry. We've seen massive farms in Brazil, industry like factories of coffee that owns like huge amount of land and on the expenses of forests or natural environments. Unfortunately, this is the reality everywhere, but I'm talking about Brazil. This is what we do. So we make sure our coffee, our sourced coffee is also certified rainforest or youth coffee. So we close the chain. So we're focusing on sourcing high quality specialty coffee that are unique, ethical, sustainable for roasters and producers. Relationship is exactly a transparent relationship, knowing exactly what the farmers are doing in Brazil to make sure they are not destroying the forest, not employing children, paying the minimum wage or above, but not below, to the laborers who work in the farm, and delivering satisfactory quality coffee to us. So the first social project we support is called GIMA in Portuguese. It's run by Bom Jesus, São Lucas and Labaredas Farm. So this social project, they are on the 12. I need a microphone. So this is the 12th year of this social and environmental project. It's run by Bom Jesus Farm, São Lucas, which is the same sister farm, just beside one each other. And Flavia, the farmer, 12 years ago, she started with her family gathering year 5 children from 7 cities, towns surrounding the farm, and teaching them or raising the awareness to these children about the responsibility in maintaining a health environment. So teaching them that they couldn't not like trap the birds, like this is super common in Brazil. Treat the animals with care, the water, the land, their friends as well. And we've seen kids 12 years ago, now adults, better human beings. Like with these days, or what she created between the farm and this project with the schools these children belong, it's something that they can measure in terms of doing well to the children. The highlight of this project is the bicycles we give away to the children. So we receive money from coffee roasters in Australia, and we buy push bikes to the children, and they can, in rural areas, commute from school home back and forth, which is important even to avoid dropouts. Forget what we know about our children. It's a completely different reality, as you know, Tony and Celine, it's poor country. And a bit of incentive is always welcome. So Red Bean has been a partner for a long time. Believing in this project can bring something to the children. 3 years ago, they improved the relationship, or they improved the social project, and now we are buying school materials, laptops, footballs for the children. It's a big day. Everyone is invited. We do trip to origin, but everyone is invited these 3 days in Brazil. It's beautiful to see. It's eye-watering day. For me, the first time I was in Brazil and I saw those children chanting like all these schools in a paddock, and it's so endearing and so intense. It changed my life. I said, look, what I'm doing is I want to do forever, because this is what we are. And so this is the major project we have. So Pedro is from these 3 farms. He owns 3 farms in Brazil. In Brazil, by law, you have the farm needs to keep at least 20% of the land untouched. Pedro leaves 42% of the land untouched. And the diversity in birds and animals in his farm is growing every year. A couple of years ago, Pedro's sister, she started a project called Wings. And what they do, they build a shelter in the farm, and when the police catches the smugglers, I don't want to show photos, it's too rough, of the birds being captured, and because they send birds everywhere to countries. When the police seizes the bird, they send to Pedro's farm, where they rescue, they are taken care, and they are released back to the nature. And they have plans to enlarge the green belt along the farm, more 20 hectares to enrich the native trees. The good thing is we have coffee roasters already engaged in this social project. So we have one in Tasmania helping us, we have a couple in Melbourne, we have one in Queensland, and they donate some money, or even they add cents to the kilos, and we send back to Pedro and Mariana. These people from APAS, they are small producers. So the women, daughters, wives, mothers, who are farmers too, they created themselves a sustainable project called Flowers in Action to support, empower female members, create better opportunities and add value to their activity, encourage women to produce, process and brand their own coffee, occupy leadership positions. Actually, now today, 16 women are currently part of it, focus in micro lots. We cup today the 16 coffees from Flowers in Action. We have one coffee roaster in Melbourne totally engaged to help us to bring these coffees to Australia. This will be the third crop we bring flowers. And we have big plans for the region as well, with the small farmers. And the fourth social project we have, it's from Ismael, the coffee here, the Dolce Cerrado, the Piberry. Ismael is a philanthropist, so he helps the local hospital since he was 18. Look, we're talking Brazil, and there's no much funds from the government to maintain the hospital. So Ismael has been helping the hospital for a long time. We just joined. We joined to offer a coffee roaster to add some money that goes towards the hospital. And we have coffee roasters again helping us. Add 20 cents to the kilo, won't harm, and that 20 cents to the kilo goes towards the hospital. That's why we launched Minas Hill Foundation, because we don't want the accounts to be shared. I don't want to see that's an independent money. We want that separate. We want an independent audit. And by the end of the financial year, the coffee roaster will receive how much coffee he purchased, how much money we raised, and the remittance to the farm. We are about to launch a company in Brazil, and we'll be exporting these bags, inner bags, lining bags, made in Melbourne, to Brazil, called biohybrid bags. It's the first tested coffee bags made with part of the bag of corn starch. It's not compostable, but the plastic LDPE4 is fully recycled. The benefits of the bag is two. We don't want plastic bags anymore, so it's hard to recycle them, this type of material. The ones they are made now uses less energy to make and less energy to recycle. It's also BPA free. It's also GMO free, genetic modified. BPA is a nasty component of every plastic, so even this one. Heavy metal free, and it's also halal certified. Great. So what we're doing, avoid contamination, less carbon footprint, better for the environment, and the company who's selling that bags to us is also creating a pathway for recycling in Melbourne. Small attitudes we do, that's Minas Hill, that's small attitudes we do towards the industry that makes the difference. I came here a little bit upset because, I don't know, fires in New South Wales, floods elsewhere, Brazil with Amazon burning. And speaking to Laura and Lou, like small initiatives will make the difference, especially in my day. And I don't want to be, or my company doesn't want to be congratulated by any of these. I think we all should be aiming to be more sustainable, paying a fair price to the farmers. Coffee is not the same. Unfortunately, we have, super cheap coffees that we know that is mainly coming from Brazil at the farmers' expenses. And I know exactly what the big factories do. They squash the farmer and said, I only pay you this, and they pay the farmer upfront. So the farmer needs to take the product when it comes to the harvest time, and sometimes it doesn't cover the costs, which is super high in Brazil right now. So costs of a first world country and wages of third world country. So small initiatives, and we are lucky to have Lou as more partner, someone who understands.
We provide a sustainability guideline, a reference. We help farmers to implement those practices, and we help companies to actually source from those farms. But I'll explain to you how that works. And our mission why we exist is to create a world where people and nature thrive in harmony. What I want to emphasize here is what we just mentioned, Rainforest Alliance, the logo is green, we use a frog. It's very environmental, the association, but we actually adopt a holistic approach to sustainability. So we also have a lot of social elements in the work that we do. Actually, we are a global program, and you might see the label a lot, but we're quite focused in the crops that we choose to work with, because we really want to make a significant impact in that sector. So we really want to change that sector, and that's why we don't do like many different types of products, but really focus all our efforts on these. When we do something, we want to see where's the need, how can we be relevant, and how can we actually make a positive change. We want to address and improve farmer livelihoods. So think of living conditions, working conditions, wages, human rights, think about forced labor, and that also links back to Australia, right? I think it was last year Australia introduced the Modern Slavery Act that still needs some work, but at least it's a step of making companies responsible to assess their supply chain for forced labor. Gender equality, indigenous land rights, which is, you can also relate it here to Australia, it's a similar issue. Youth engagement, climate, the climate strikes. Again, that is also linked to deforestation, everything goes hand in hand. So protecting biodiversity, protecting wildlife, and all of these issues, they're all interlinked as well. They also have a lot of root causes that go beyond the farm. So corruption, for example, and again leading to systematic poverty. So when you want to address these issues, you need a lot of different initiatives and a lot of players through the supply chain and across sectors to actually really make a change. Coffee is a cash crop. So you can't feed your family with it. You, like Selena already said before, they grow the cherries. It's not a finished product. They don't really, they might drink coffee, but not like we do it here. And if you don't get the cash, why would you grow the crop? So they kind of abandoned their field and just started to plant cassava. Cassava, I'm not sure if do you know what cassava is? It's like a very starchy, high in carbs, kind of bit like corn, but then different. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain. It's actually up there on the right. So they cut it in little pieces, and then children also take it to school as a snack because it's really filling and full of minerals. So they started to grow cassava on that coffee plantation because you can feed your family, you can eat it yourself, and actually in neighbor Congo there's a market to export it, so also they could get some cash. So for me that was really, we talk about it, we see it here, we have all these discussions going on about low coffee prices, but just really to see the impact that it has and farmers just saying, okay, I'm switching, was a very big moment of actual seeing the effects. And two things, if the effects of climate change like they are happening now persist, and if we don't change the way we're actually cultivating coffee, the area that is suited for coffee cultivation will significantly decrease. The expected land that is suitable for coffee growing will be reduced by half. And this is only a map for Vietnam, but we have similar maps for other countries. So that also means that those farmers that are still there, that they either lose their land, so what they do, they might move to higher altitudes, cut down forests, start growing coffee if they don't know what else to do because it's their livelihood. So it's not that it's not their fault. They're like, okay, I'm an evil deforester and I don't care. No, you're looking after your family. You don't have a choice. So these situations are changing. So we also need to see how can we grow the same on less amount of available land, as well as also addressing the effects of climate change. It is very serious, but there are also a lot of initiatives out there that are now really working to make a change, and we also really see results. What's actually behind the seal? So the seal is just the final thing. It's just the reassurance for companies and consumers alike that you know that this actually comes from a farm that has implemented more sustainable practices. Because not every company has the privilege, like Lou, to know Marcelo, who then knows his farmers, or like, you know, Selena, that you develop this good relationship with the producers that you buy from through all those steps that we learned. But not every company has that, and not everyone wants to or can believe on what their supplier is telling them, because at the end of the day, still a lot is about business. So you need to have proof. So what we try to do with Rainforest Alliance is really to provide that assurance and to provide a mechanism where you can actually compare, for example, coffee that's been sourced from Brazil with coffee that's been sourced from Kenya, and know that when they have this seal, they have actually met this baseline of sustainability requirements. It's about balancing people, planet, and profit. And profit sometimes, I think you also, Selena, you mentioned it, price and everything is not something that people always like to talk about, but it's, again, like I said, it comes down to business also for producers. So we work with a system of trainers that train farmers on the importance of gender equality, for example. So involving women who perform kind of the majority of the work, not only on harvesting, but also on decision-making level, and that the money that they earn, that they can actually use it, and how that then impacts the family and the wider community. Often farmers have been farmer from generation upon generation, so it's not that they don't want their children to go to school. It's often like, yeah, I've worked on the farm. How else can my son know how the farm works? Or, you know, if there's no school in the area, where do we want the kids to go? So everything is linked to each other. So we provide training on that awareness and how children, for example, can help out on the farm as long as it doesn't interfere with their schooling, so that they find a better balance between life and work. And everything within the local context. That's actually a very important thing to mention, because we can come there and tell you like, oh, you need to do this and that. But within those communities, in those different countries, different cultures, things just work different than how we operate here in Australia. So keeping that in mind is very important for the work that we do as well. We help farmers to monitor the impacts of climate change. They can be, as we also even know here in Australia, can be super different. You can have floods and droughts, you can have early rainfall, late rainfall, no rainfall. Everything impacts the crops and the harvest cycle. So by monitoring it and training them on how to work with that, we can actually help them to protect their crops. Farm management is a very big element of our program. I don't know about you, but I hate administration. I'm really bad at it, personal and for work. But only by having actual insight in what you do, by record keeping, can you make educated decisions. So only by knowing what your costs are, what your saving capacity is, what you need, you can actually make educated decisions about whether you're going to invest or how much you can actually pay your workers, how much workers you can hire. So we provide a lot of training on that as well. And we see that that is actually one of the main elements that make farmers more independent. So really to run their farm as a successful business. There's no really such thing as direct trade. It goes throughout a very long supply chain. So we need to make sure that once they, really end up in these bags, we are assured that it actually originates from a farm that has implemented more sustainable practices. So we work with an online traceability system where each and every actor in the supply chain needs to link and confirm it with each other. So once a final company wants to put a logo on it and sell it as a certified product to the end consumer, they have to ask approval to us. We check their entire supply chain if all the transactions are in place, and only then do they get access to the logo, can they print their packaging and bring it to market. So that's really the assurance. We really want to change the way the world produces, so how things happen in origin, how business is done, and then how that impacts the coffee and the other products that we are consuming right here. And making that the new normal. So yes, for now, it is still point of differentiation, and in many different ways or with additional projects, you really can still be that point of differentiation. But ideally, we would see that that every company at least has some kind of sustainability project or assurance in place to do his or her part in furthering that mission. Luckily, what we see is that also the main retailers, so I already mentioned Coles, but also Woolworths, I was at David Jones just before here, they're all setting their sustainable sourcing commitments. And this is really important because they eventually are also, big players in the market. They source a lot of volumes. So when they actually also set commitments, they drive the impact throughout the origins that they source from. So you will more and more see the logo popping up, and then you know what the system is behind it. So a company cannot just say anymore, oh yeah, we're doing this. No, we want to know what they're doing and how can they prove it. And also there is where we come in, and we can be a tool. So we're not the solution, but we are a tool to actually help to increase their sustainable sourcing and further their sustainability strategy.